Welcome back to the Own It 10-Minute Skill Swap. I'm Morgan Meyer, intern at the Dooley Leadership Experience and an undergraduate at Syracuse University. With help from the DLE subject matter experts, the 10-Minute Skill Swap zeroes in on one skill that can give you a boost, personally or professionally, and provides actionable tips and coaching from a subject matter expert. In this installment, author, consultant, and DLE alum Ginger Kuenzel shares tips on polishing your emails to ensure your recipient's attention.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. I just realized I sort of prepared this using, I use Outlook Mail, so I don't know if, which seems to be sort of an enterprise thing that most people that work for larger companies use, but if you're not using Outlook, some of this might not apply to you, but a lot of it's just general, so it would apply. So I kind of like this. I'm going to start at the beginning with the header of an email, because it's really important you think about who you want to send it to, which seems sort of like, well, I know that, but how many times do you get an email and you hit reply all? And how many times are you annoyed that people do that to you? And you get on a string and you just get one email after another because everyone's hitting reply all and you really don't need to know all that. So just be careful and make sure you're only putting in the people that you need to get your email in the to and the CC line. And I think it's also important to distinguish between the to and the CC line. I don't tend to use the BCC line because it seems so secretive. There might be a few cases where you need the blind carbon copy, but I don't really like it that much. So Linda, when I was talking to her, she gave another good tip is don't actually even put the recipients in until you're ready to send the email, because we've probably all mistakenly hit send and we weren't finished with our email. So even if you're replying, just delete the stuff out of the header and put that in at the end when you're really ready to send. And now let's move down to the subject line, because that's also really important. I notice, and I do this myself a lot, I just don't think about the subject line, particularly when I'm replying. And after a couple of days, sometimes the subject line doesn't really have anything to do anymore with the email you're sending. So take full advantage of the subject line. Also to, if there's a deadline or an action item, put that in the subject line. You might say action needed by, and put the date in. That's really a good way to grab attention. Okay, so let's see. So now let's go down to the body of the message. Don't use artistic or cutesy fonts. I like to use Arial or Calibri. I think those are both pretty standard fonts. And some of us who are a little older have trouble reading it if it's below 10 point. In fact, 11 or 12 would be the best. And so you might just go ahead and set that as your default. And you've probably read this or heard this, don't shout with all caps. People don't like that. You can make your point in other ways. It just doesn't look very professional when you use a lot of all caps. Also, just using italics or bold or colored font, just be careful with it. You want your email to look as professional as possible. So if you really want to call attention to something, I like to use the yellow highlighting. And I assume everybody sort of knows how to do that. I'm going to share my screen, let's see, because I want to show you this trick that I learned recently. Where is the share the screen on this? Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to open. This is where it's out. So you can add a reminder. And you can add a reminder to the recipients. So you can tell them, you can put this reminder, you can put a date in. So let's say you need them to review something by next Wednesday. So you put that in there and put the time in. Maybe it's the end of the day or the beginning of the day. Okay. They will then get a reminder on that day that something is due. So I'm going to go back now to, oh gosh, can I get out of here again? Wait, let's see. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing now. So I'll try to make it quick now. So we're in the body of the email, and then it's just regular good writing habits of get to your point right away, because I'm a journalist, and we learned early on people stop reading after a while. So don't put your main points far down in the email. Get them right in the first paragraph, and then you can elaborate on them further down in the email. But particularly if you need somebody to do something, make sure it's in the first paragraph as well as in the subject line. Unlike texts, you have time to think about your email. And if I have enough time, I often like to just save my email in my draft folder, and go back and read it again. Because a lot of times you know, you've written something, it seems clear when you're writing it, and when you go back and read it, you realize, oh, that's a little confusing, or maybe I sound too direct or too angry. It just gives you time to think about what you want to say. A lot of people, including me, save almost all my emails as a matter of record. And of course, companies can always save them and go back to them. So you want to be really careful what you're saying in your email as well as how you're saying it. Because sometimes things just sound, you don't want them to sound that direct or that angry, but they just come across that way. So just keep that in mind, and also always keep in mind who you're speaking to. This is in general for formal emails. I mean, obviously sometimes an email just needs a quick response, and this doesn't apply to that. I wrote down a couple examples of things where people might misunderstand you. So let me just, for instance, the how you use your commas is really important. This is one of my favorite examples. If you write, I am grateful to my parents, comma, Mother Teresa and the Pope. So that one needs a comma after Mother Teresa. So that's something that you might catch on the second read through when it's in your draft. The other thing I just did the other day was I said something, RESENT, your email. Now, I resent your email, or I resent your email. So I would just put a hyphen in there, but that was something I caught on the second read through. And also just be really clear. And again, this is just a regular writing tip. Instead of saying something like, our company experienced a Q4 equity diminishment, you can just say, our company lost money in the fourth quarter. So don't try to sound, I don't know. I think a lot of law enforcement officers that I hear on the news and everything, they also tend to use sort of lingo and try to sound sort of highfalutin, and people just really want to be able to understand things. As far as length, just that really depends on the email as well. Be clear and concise, but use as much text as you need to make your point. I like to use bullet points because I think they stand out. And also, if it's a really long email, subheaders can be really good, and I would bold them. So again, this is just sort of regular writing tips. Now, as far as email etiquette, I think it's a really good idea to respond to somebody right away in a lot of cases. Like if somebody asks me to do something and I know that I'm not going to be able to get to it for a couple of days, I'll just send them a brief email saying, hey, got it. I'll get back to you tomorrow or by the end of the week or whatever's appropriate. But just let them know it didn't go into a black hole. And let's see what else. Yeah, if you're angry when you write an email, which happens to all of us, that's a really good time to save it and not send it right away and go back, because then your anger has probably died down and you can find a more diplomatic way of getting your point across. So And I think Linda made a good point to me when we were talking too, that every culture is different. So your company culture may be slightly different. I'm not sure how much difference that makes in the tone of your email, because sometimes you're sending an email within your company, sometimes you're sending it to a customer or a partner or somebody outside your company. So in general, don't be flip, don't use a lot of smiley faces, and it's a more formal way of
Never
communicating.
do that.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions?
What about when somebody is sending you an email? Like, what's the, should you, like, I never know. Sometimes it feels like folks are trying to just continually say, okay, or like close out the conversation, because it's not like you're walking away. So it's like, who gets the last word, it feels like. So, I mean, what's the rule for replies to something?
Yeah, that's kind of a hard one. I mean, that's probably on a one-off individual basis, but I know what you mean. Sometimes it's like I said, if you should acknowledge that you got the email, but at some point you got to stop, because it just goes, okay, and I got your email saying you got my email. But yeah, it's sort of hard to have a rule of thumb on that. I think you just kind of have to use your judgment.
I had a question, Ginger.
Yep.
I was curious, in my sales background, we were always using, like for the subject line, we'd use a sentence, right? So only the first word would be capitalized. Whereas my marketing, degree tells me you should capitalize every word in the subject line. So what are your thoughts?
Oh, I've never seen that. I mean, that to me, this is just my personal opinion, would sound again like somebody shouting at me. I just think the use of the subject line to get your point across is really important, and as concisely as you can. Like if I need somebody to review something, I will say review colon, then they know that they have to review. Instead of saying, I would like you to review this, it's just really important how you word the subject line.
Gotcha,
John,
thank
I
you.
totally agree. I definitely camel font like all of my emails, where I capitalize the first letter of every word.
Zuber, what's your take on that?
I usually try to make my subject line as concise and direct as possible, and as few words to get the point across as I can.
Yeah, I didn't know about the all caps, John.
Yeah, I mean, my issue, I mean, I do hundreds of emails a day. My issue is I have fat fingers, and unless I reread my email, I've got, every other word spelled wrong. So.
Oh yeah, I
Personal.
didn't even go into that. Yeah, definitely make sure your grammar and spelling is correct.
And
I
spell
try not
check
to get
doesn't
wordy.
always work on the subject line, so make sure you double check.
Yeah.
Oh
Sure.
yeah, I don't think the spell check does, at least in Outlook, it doesn't do this.
And
And
Linda,
if
I
you
agree
work
with
with
you. I
common
often
terms
don't.
that aren't words, add to dictionary is huge.
Yeah. And Linda, I agree with you. I often don't put in the who am I sending it to until after I write it, because I have made a mistake and sent half emails and had to go back and complete them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Embarrassing emails. I've had really bad ones. Yeah. I've had some bad stories.
And as a little bit of humor, Ginger, a lot of times I'll have prices in emails of mine to customers, and so I'll from now on I'm going to put the price at the very end, hoping they don't read it. So.
We all have that where, like, if it's a long email, you just don't, or even if you read it to the end, you're not as alert and paying attention. That's why it's really important.
For sure.
And I love the highlighting, or bold or highlighting, I think works, but just don't overdo it.
Ginger, once again, thank you for preparing that for us. You gave us some awesome tips, and we all made some mistakes through emails, especially in the business world. And like any section in the DLE, we always like to recap with some key items and some recap and then some action steps. So, Ginger, you made some great points about follow-up. That's extremely important. Just acknowledge to the person that you received their email and give them a time range, like Ginger mentioned, that you'll be able to get back to them. Straight to the point. Ginger made a very key statement. Be clear and concise. You're not writing a novel. And when you're writing in business world, you get a ton of emails, like Bob said. Make it easy on the person that's reading it. And common vernacular. John, Bob, Caleb, all that are in sales that deal with complex topics, using common vernacular, making it easy for the person to understand goes a long way, and it really builds great business relationships.
Thank you for listening. Stay current on all the DLE's great programming offered at no charge by reading our newsletter, The Hub. You can subscribe to The Hub and join our extraordinary community of motivated, supportive young professionals and experienced leaders at dle.duly.com.